Dear Ben, watching your projects and philosophy around design and making inspired me to start building things myself, and now I'm trying to turn this passion into a real professional path. I can't tell you how many times I get questions just like this. So let's break it down. So the delivery and install went successfully, but they want 3 more islands. Now, thankfully, these are going to be smaller than the one big blob that we made, but basically what I've been doing all week is getting the lumber ready, cutting it down to size, and then starting to glue up. Glue up is the most important process, and we learned a few things from the last ones, and I think we're going to be able to reduce the amount of cracks that we have in this new set. So delivery days are always a little bit stressful, and this is a very complicated building with a bunch of things going on as they rush to the opening. We can also now sort of tease where we're actually installing these. And these are going into a new museum in downtown LA called Dataland. And it's a museum dedicated to the work of Rafiq Anadol, who's kind of one of the premier digital artists in the world right now. His work is incredible. I can't show you what the whole museum looks like yet. It's opening on June 20th, so pretty tight deadline coming up. Tickets are on sale now, so if you're in the LA area, I highly recommend reserving a ticket and going to see this thing. It is, I guess the closest thing I could compare it to is the Sphere in Las Vegas, but this is art and it's way more intense and I think more sophisticated than the Sphere. The reason why I compare it to the Sphere is it's on that scale of just wondrous technological innovation that's unlike anything else. So it's a one of one, and I think things that are one of one are always worth going to see. But that means I'm back into glue up and power carving mode, and kicked off the week by tweaking my back, so that's making things a little more challenging and making sure I move a little slow. The flip side though, that did give me some time to answer some direct messages, and one of those is going to be the question and our topic for today. So let's get started. So I really want to answer this question because it's similar to the most common type of question I get. So I'm just going to read it and we're going to go through it and see if we can give them a good answer. Dear Ben, my name is Konstantinos. I'm from Greece. Watching your projects and philosophy around design and making inspired me to start building things myself and create my own small workshop. Recently, I completed my first collection of handmade pieces using wood, metal, and resin, and now I'm trying to turn this passion into a real professional path. At the moment, I'm trying to find the right direction to promote my work and build my brand. I still haven't found buyers yet, and honestly, that's been discouraging for me. I'm currently working on my website, which I hope will be ready within the next few weeks, and I'm trying to understand where I should focus my time and energy. If you had any advice regarding building a brand around handmade furniture and design, finding the right audience and clients, improving my work and design aesthetic, content creation and social media, or anything else that you think is important for someone at the beginning of their journey, I would truly appreciate it. Thank you, sincerely, best regards, Konstantinos. One, thank you for such a lovely question and for the nice words. It makes me so happy to hear this. I looked at his work, and you can all see this. It's at Bouf, BOUF _studio. It's incredible. You never really know what you're gonna get when people sort of say it, but I was pleasantly surprised to see that your work is actually pretty close to where you need to be. I mean, the palette that you're putting together is not an overdone one. It's actually uncommon and very striking. The pieces appear to be beautifully made. And what I really like to see is that you even have some videos showing your process, actually showing the fabrication process. I can't tell you how many times I get questions just like this. So let's break it down. The first one about brand is you're not trying necessarily yet to create the next big furniture brand. Your brand in the beginning, especially if you're doing handmade stuff and you're not an industrial designer sending stuff off to be manufactured and sold with retail, You're going hands-on. You're a farmer. You're farm to table. So your brand and your process are going to be one and the same. So you want to show your process as much as possible and also include yourself in that process, because you don't have to build a separate brand with a arbitrary logo. It can just be about the unique things that you are making. That's the shortest distance to an authentic brand that's impossible for anyone else to copy. Other people can copy your logo. Other people can copy your website. And if you're successful, they will. They can't copy who you are, and they can't copy you when you show your process exactly. Maybe they take some little bits from that, but that's all fair game in the internet as sort of a learning tool. So your brand just can be about you, and that way it changes and grows authentically as you become a more skilled maker. What I like right now is that you're already ahead of the game by having things that are visually distinct. And it is very discouraging to make things that you're really proud of and then they don't sell. That's really can be discouraging, because you start to have self-doubt. You think, oh, am I just crazy? Am I the only one that thinks my work is good and other people just are being nice to me and saying compliments, but nobody wants this? There's a lot of reasons why your work might not be selling. And what I find most often with makers in a similar position is that they don't actually have the social circle of people that can afford to buy the things that they're making. Handmade things are slow. Most people around the world do not buy handmade designer furniture. It's a rarity. That is a small percentage of the population that buys those kind of things. The bigger and more expensive the piece, the smaller and smaller percentage of people are going to be your clients. Now, no matter where you're at in the world, there's probably high-end and low-end places in the town or city that you're in. If you're in a really small town, there might be very small amount of differential. But where I would start is, if you're in a city, go to the most expensive parts of the city. Look at the restaurants. Look at the shops and boutiques and things that are around. Look at the nicest hotels. Now, you're going to want to go to the ones that are not franchises, not part of some big brand. Something that is local and specific to that location, but at the higher end. Hotels are a really interesting thing, because if you find a hotel that has like decor where you think your things could fit, they might have a little lobby gift store, particularly if there's a hotel that caters to tourists. You might talk to them and say, hey, I'm local, I hand make these things. Would you like to carry them in your store? And then start trying to get a retail footprint. Retail is a really good place to start, especially if you're in a city that has some tourism, because one, you can go and make the connections. When people are traveling for vacation and for tourism reasons, they often like to bring something back. And some of your little side tables, I think, are a really perfect kind of little artifact that could be easily shipped back, or someone could take it with them, particularly that little table where the top screws off. So one is, I would spend some time in those areas. Now, it's not just to try to make the sale. This is also a research mission. You're trying to look at what is the current consumer taste of the people that could afford to buy the things that I'm making. You want to look and see what colors they're into, what fonts they're using, how they're presenting things, what kind of food are they ordering at these fancy restaurants. Being around that will sort of put you in their mindset, and you want to be empathetic, not judgmental, to what is drawing them to these locations where they're spending money and potentially, hopefully, buying your products. Now, the other good news is that you were self-motivated so far. And that's true with a lot of people that pick up woodworking or making or designing or knitting or crocheting or sewing or whatever it is, painting. You're already winning because you found an activity that you love doing, even if you're not making money at it. You're already ahead. This is entertainment. The hours you spend in your workshop are not hours that you're spending money at a bar or at a party or doing more frivolous habits. So the key is, how do you harness that motivation into a place that gives you more optionality on the business front? It's not about immediately turning things into a business. That's a great way to ruin the fun. And it's also a little bit premature if you're at the beginning of your journey. If I would have tried to start selling my designs 2 years after I started, it would have been a disaster because I wasn't really mature yet in the making process. My designs weren't differentiated enough to really sell successfully at that point. Now, I did make some sales, and here and there people bought some of the more complex pieces. But if I would have tried to turn my pipe and 2x12 tables into products, even if I did succeed in selling this kind of DIY-ish furniture, someone else would have just knocked it off because I had no moat or competitive advantage or identity in my work. So the longer I waited to sell things, the more differentiated my products became. And I kind of started, when I started selling things, selling them at a pretty high margin for large amounts of money. Now, during that time is also when I built up my audience, so that also made that easier. So in the beginning, you really want to focus on establishing that first line of products, which Konstantinos has already done. Then you want to think about what you missed, right? So in his case, he's using this like almond wood, which kind of reminds me of olive wood, which makes sense, it's from Greece, and white epoxy. It's a really striking combination. Now, if you take that skill set for epoxy and wood, you might as well add a black one or maybe like a dark green one and start varying it. Because what you want to show, especially on your social media, there might be someone that's already come to your page and said, I really like this, but it's the wrong color for my particular house. So experimenting with different novelty and things like that on the social media feed is a great way to create more potential matches between your work and the customer. You also might discover, as I often do, that you end up liking colors and combinations and finishes that you thought were not going to be your favorite. The other thing I noticed about your work is a lot of it is high gloss. It looks fantastic. There are some people, though, where that's going to be disqualifying for. So if you like that, do most of your work that way. But every once in a while, like every fourth project, try something in matte. It just creates more possibilities for connection with one little change. That gives you a broader breadth of work. The other type of people that you should be meeting are interior designers. Interior designers are one of the top ways that handmade furniture makers sell their work. And they can be very consistent clients. So that might just be looking around your city or town, finding all the different interior designers, sending them photos, which you have very nice photos of your work, and saying, hey, these are the type of materials I work with and the types of shapes. If you ever have need for a custom piece or any of these, I'd love to work with you, and I'm very reliable and I'll make sure everything's there on time. And if you have your own ideas and you'd like me to try to fabricate them, I'd love to collaborate with you. Interior designers have very specific aesthetic ideas that they want to see brought into the world. What they often don't have is a lot of fabrication or technical knowledge. And so you reaching out and helping them with maybe an idea they have in their mind, and then they give a tour of your workshop and they see what you can do and they fall in love with like a piece when they just pick it up and they see, oh, it looks even better in person than it did in the photos. That's sort of the other way, I think, to make those connections. The third one, which is probably the most obvious, but I think people, particularly creative people that are thoughtful, have a hard time with it, is friends and family. Often I find that creatives are the least likely people. They kind of want to just do their work and then hope that it works out. Sometimes you got to be a little bit explicit and go out to friends and family and say, hey, I'm trying to make this a business. Do you know anyone that would like this? Do you know anyone where this would be perfect for their home? So I would do those three things: go to the high-end areas, talk to interior designers, and it's okay to be explicit and hit up your friends and family. You're not demanding that they buy something. You just want to let them know that you're opening or you're launching your website and you have things for sale. And if they have someone that they want a custom gift for, bring them into the process. And what's great is you haven't built that much inventory yet. Your projects aren't massive. So those first things, people might look at me, oh, I don't need a round table, I don't need this, I don't need this, and so they're dismissing it. So giving them the option for you to both develop your skills even farther, but then also for them to feel like they help author the commission. It might be, oh, my daughter's having a birthday, and so could you make her a little box for this thing that I'm giving out of the epoxy and wood? So when you talk to friends and family, don't just try to sell them, try to bring them into your process and give them a sense of the authorship and the ownership. That'll create the engagement. That'll get them to tell their friends about it more. That'll spread it via word of mouth. When it comes to social media and promotion, there's no shortage of people that'll tell you all the ways to edit your reels, to put good hooks in, to format your YouTube endeavors and all those things. So it's fine. I wouldn't get too caught up in that beyond just the basics. Video is really important. Every design firm focuses so much on the photography and the finished product. It's great, but every catalog has nice looking products that are beautifully staged and photographed. Video is the small business's advantage. Video and authenticity are hard for a West Elm or a CB2 or a Restoration Hardware to fake. But authentic video around the process that you actually use is very doable for you as an individual, particularly if you have a decent smartphone. So video and process are the differentiators. Still publish and post your finished photography, which looks quite nice. But the thing that's really going to grow and differentiate is the video of the process. You can mix those two together. All my first YouTube videos, I didn't really have video because my lighting wasn't good enough, because I was in basically a windowless room in an attic, where I could really get the video beauty shots to look right. I was using crappy little video camera. So I had to take still photos and then put a little bit of movement at the end of the process parts. And that's how I did it for years before I kind of upgraded equipment and got a little bit better at it. So process is the opportunity. Also, look at videos that you really like that have a lot of views and reverse engineer them. And really look at your process and don't just think about it chronologically. Think about your process once you've recorded it with a sense of empathy for an audience member. So think about what part is the most interesting. If you didn't know anything about making and you were just walking by and looking in a window of a workshop, what would be the thing that would make you stop and look a little bit longer? That's probably what the first few seconds of your video should be. Also, don't be afraid to use your voice. Say what you're doing. Talk to people. So many designers just want to let their work speak for themselves. That's great if you're already in the store and have distribution. You have to introduce yourself because you are the differentiator for your process as a handmade builder and designer. So talk to people. Tell them what you're doing. Tell them why you're doing it. Tell them why you like what you're doing and why you picked white epoxy as opposed to black epoxy. Tell them these things because they're wondering it. Draw them in, have a conversation. That's a great way to engage with people on social media, and eventually, hopefully, it will lead to sales. But Konstantinos, I think you're off to a great start. I love the variety. I would keep mixing between the smaller products, which will probably be your first sales, but they won't be sales for huge amounts of money because they're smaller items. And I think it's all about the next steps are about managing your time. I love that you're doing lighting. Lighting is a great product type because it can sell for a lot, but it's not too big. I love the little cafe steel and epoxy and wood table. I would try to do one even bigger and bigger. That's a great little kind of side table, but you really should do a dining table for 4 or 5 people and perhaps even work in a pendant light that matches. But you have all the ability in the world. So it's just doing subtle variations to broaden your product line without having to expand your workshop. So you can do that with epoxy with the different colors. Keep going up in scale, a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, a little bit bigger, particularly since you can do steel bases. And I'll continue to watch and see how you progress. But great start, keep going. All right, Shane, what do we got? We're doing overrated, underrated?
Let's do it. Being your own boss.
Being your own boss is overrated because being your own boss is the glass half full phrasing. When people say they are their own boss, they're also saying they're also their own employee. So it sounds cool to say you're being your own boss, but what kind of boss are you going to be to yourself? How hard are you going to work to yourself? How abusive are you going to be to yourself? You are also your own employee. And so do you have that ability to push yourself hard enough and keep yourself disciplined, but also be kind and forgiving enough? I think there's a lot of bravado and chest thumping about, oh, I'm my own boss and I would never work for anyone else. Well, you're still working for yourself. So I tend to think of it not as being my own boss, but as being my own employee. So what kind of leadership do I want? What kind of consideration, kindness, and empathy do I want? And I've always thought it was pretty silly when people put CEO and they have no employees. I think it's much more appropriate to put janitor, laborer, administrator, accountant, marketing executive, and CEO, and put that last, but make sure you include janitor if those are all the tasks you're actually doing. Be authentic, be real about it. But yeah, you don't just get to be your own boss, you also have to be your own employee.
Celebrity podcasts.
I'm sure there's some that are good. I don't really think there's that many that I listen to, outside of maybe like news ones and stuff like that. In general, I think like there's people that are good at storytelling and narrative, and they might be famous for something else, but it does seem like there is a little bit of a rush to the medium lately, and I think that will continue. But I don't think there's really like any kind of traditional celebrity podcast that I really listen to or find relatable.
Festool.
Festool's overrated with maybe the exception of their sanding system. It doesn't mean they're not great, high quality tools. They are. I've had a few of their tools in my lifetime. Particularly, I had the miter saw. I thought it was like pretty mid, and for how expensive it was, definitely not worth the money. The track saw seems amazing, and I see people do incredible work with it. The sanding system is phenomenal. I've used that when I've worked in some of my friends' workshops. It's great. That seems like it's probably worth the money. But just because something is from a really expensive brand doesn't mean it's universally good.
Grass lawns.
Oh, grass lawns are way overrated. There's so many interesting things you can do with open land. A food garden would be way cooler and probably even better looking if you sort of plant it right. Landscaping is underrated, I think, in design. Particularly, I think architects don't think about it enough. Everybody likes plants. Everybody likes nature. Lawns seem like kind of the most generic way to do it. Now, a great lawn is a fun place to play, but front lawns in particular, it's not like people are often out there kind of like using it for social interacting. So I would like to see like more trees and natural landscaping in the front, which can also provide a little more privacy from the street. And then maybe just some strategic grass in the backyard for kids playing and social gatherings and stuff like that. But just plain grass lawns with a little mulchy border doesn't add much. It's still a lot of work. And yeah, but I am getting a robot lawnmower soon, so I'll try that out on my parents' lawn.
HBO.
HBO is properly rated. We'll see what happens after this newest round of mergers and stuff like that. My probably go-to for non-YouTube or Instagram content would be HBO and Apple TV. I just think they're a little better curated. I rarely find anything on Netflix that I find doesn't feel too dumbed down. Doesn't mean it's not entertaining. It's just when I go there, I just feel like everything is well produced, but it's all produced for stuff that doesn't require your full attention.
Public transportation.
I think public transportation is overrated. And it has, look, when I was in college, it gets treated as such an important thing because urban designers and people, they try to like, oh, it's so important and we need it. Now, Great public transportation, like in Tokyo or even the New York subway, are fantastic. The problem with a lot of the American public transportation is that it's not well maintained and that it kind of feels icky and dirty. So public transportation should be heavily invested in. It should be something that's beautiful and amazing. But if it's not, just having that idealistic approach is really frustrating for people that are looking at the human excrement or dirtiness of it, while some of their hipster friends are trying to tell them how awesome it is. And it's that dissonance that I think makes the conversation around it really frustrating. Now, one of my favorite public transportation experiences outside of Japan, which is phenomenal, when I was in Rotterdam, it was really cool to see how people use the bike lanes. And I was walking, I got up early and was going out for a coffee, and I was walking around the city, and you would see people just like a businessman in like the most like beautifully tailored suit and like a leather briefcase, just riding a bicycle down the bike lane to work. Like a high-end professional versus like people on delivery bikes. That was really cool. The bike lanes were really thoughtfully implemented. And as a type of public transportation, I mean, the bikes aren't public, but because they created that space, they made it nice enough to where people that economically needed it felt dignified using it. And people that could afford to have private cars still felt, oh no, this is great. We're gonna ride our bikes to work too. So that, I think, is when public transportation works, but you have to actually commit to making it a beautiful experience. Kind of like parks. There are some amazing parks. There are so many crappy parks that nobody goes to unless it's like, delinquent kids looking for a place to smoke cigarettes and practice graffiti. And that's a shame. They have to be maintained, they have to be invested in, and they have to be good design for these things to actually work. But just as an idea, no, sorry, especially in America, it's overrated. It shouldn't be, but I hear people talking about how important it is all the time, and then I ask them, how often do you take it? Oh, well, it's just not convenient for me and where I live. So I find it to be one of the things that people really want to like, but often outside of like New York, oh, here's another one. DC has some really good subway stations. They kind of they're a little brutalist, like a little out of Star Wars. So I am rooting for a better investment in public transportation that works, but I'm not holding my breath for it because I've been promised high-speed rail in California for a long time. I've paid a lot of taxes here, and we haven't gotten any.
HOAs.
Homeowners associations. I've only really been involved with condo associations personally. I've been involved with HOAs and as sort of a designer and dealing with them for house design projects. They're a necessary evil. There's some great content around sort of HOAs. A lot of it's AI generated though now. But in general, I think they can be fodder for like really funny sitcom type moments. But people can get really uptight because the home is such an important financial investment for people, and they see their neighboring homes in their community as reflective of their values. So it can create a lot of points of contention about sort of presentability and who's doing what. So I am very happy to not be in a HOA currently.
Tiny houses.
God, tiny houses had a run. I feel like there's less hype about them now. Now it just seems to be people just want affordability, period. The problem with tiny houses is they're not affordable per square foot. It's not that it's so expensive to build each square foot of housing, it's expensive to start a house. And the more regulated your state is, the more expensive it is just to start the house. So if you have to get a permit to build a tiny house, you might as well build bigger because that initial startup cost is going to be great. And then the last thing that you're not adding is actually the cheap square footage on top of it. So if you built like a 600 or 700 square foot house, right, you're not getting storage space. You're not even getting a volume of air. where you take a crap is not that far away from where you're cooking food and not that far away from where you're sleeping. So you're going to have a lot of scents and stale air circulating around from the stir fry that you made to whatever you did in the bathroom afterwards, right into your sleeping quarters. Disgusting. Not enough air. To add an extra 300 or 400 square feet of just space is not that much more. And if you're building freestanding, go for it. Now, if you're doing infill within a city and you got you're turning a loft into an apartment building or something like that, or you're turning a commercial space into a residential space for a loft, sure, get really creative in a place like New York, totally can work. But if you're building an actual freestanding house, I don't think it ever makes sense to go below 1,000 square feet. To build the 700 square foot version, you're still going to do bathrooms and kitchens in the same amount. You're just not getting as much volume of air. So I would say about 1,000 square feet is the smallest tiny house I would ever do. Beyond that, you're cutting out the cost-effective stuff and you're not really saving much money, and you're just crippling your ability to resell it to a more normal person.
Douglas fir.
Douglas fir is interesting. I'm using it a lot right now. It's a difficult wood to work with because it's so splintery. It has a very dramatic color and grain, which can make it hard to blend into an environment. I think the only thing I really like about it is the size in which I can get it and that it's not pine. So it's really the only wood I can get consistently out here in chunks as opposed to boards. And I think it's more, if you change the dimension that you get your material in, you'll automatically differentiate your design. And so what I like about Douglas fir is that I'm getting it at a reasonable price in an unusual dimension that I can then combine to make even bigger pieces. And by getting sort of volumetric pieces of wood instead of flat planks, it leads me to power carving or making really kind of monolithic chunky stuff that automatically looks different from a lot of the stuff that's out there. So it's not that I think Douglas fir is great. It's just that I'm always looking for a point of differentiation that then flows right into an easy way of fabricating for myself.
Fine dining.
Fine dining's overrated. Good dining, I think, is all we really need to focus on. I like going to a fancy restaurant that's kind of esoteric and conceptual every once in a while, like maybe 3 or 4 times a year. It's actually good enough. What I do love is an elevated neighborhood restaurant. There are so many good ones, like one that you can walk to from your apartment or from your house. And those restaurants still can be expensive. But by fine dining, I mean where it's trying to be its own entertainment and event. Just, I don't know. I love this sort of, the lower end of the high end, I think, is where the sweet spot is. And also, I think cooking for yourself and for your friends, always better. There's this challenge too, having a dinner with a bunch of friends is a lot of fun. But if you're in a major city or even a medium city, going out to dinner nowadays with 6 to 8 people, it easily, especially if you get a couple drinks, bills can get up there, $75 to $120 per person. And forget about if you're in New York or LA, it can be way north of that. Cooking at home for friends is great. And one of the main reasons I love entertaining is that there's none of that pressure of who's going to pick up the check at the end of the night. If I invite people over to my house for dinner, they'll bring a bottle of wine, or they'll bring an interesting food thing that they discovered or something else for the kind of show and tell. But it's nice, I think, not having to have that awkward moment at the end or feeling like you have to, accommodate a social circle where different people have different economic means. So going to a cool restaurant, particularly if you're traveling into a new town, love that. But just as a regular thing to do that. Oh, let me tell you what's totally overrated. Ordering fancy restaurant food for delivery. Go to the restaurant. Get the environment. Get the lighting. Get the thing. Get out of your house. Don't order expensive restaurant food delivered to your house. It's not going to be as good. It wasn't meant to be packaged up and then delivered. That's just lazy and sloppy. Cook for yourself or get out of the house. Those are the only two options. Everything else is crap. Right, thanks for watching. Short episode, not a lot of demos because mending my back. But keep your questions coming. This was a really fun one, and check out our new Greek friends work.